The day I realized that I am an extreme overthinker, I also accepted the fact that I'm going to be a really anxious person. And let me explain how. So, why do overthinkers overthink? What is our biggest fear? I think our biggest fear is uncertainty and like not having control over things. That is why we overthink all of our actions. If I text them this and say this, how would they react? What if they react in a way that I'm not prepared for? If I choose this over that, how will my life turn out? We hate making decisions because we are so scared of what will end up happening. Also, not having control over situations, those blank spaces, those not knowing what's happening. Like if your partner does not respond for a certain amount of time, you don't know what's happening, and that lack of information sets your intestines on fire, doesn't it? So overthinkers truly hate uncertainty and not knowing things and not being prepared for whatever is to come. We hate not being prepared for consequences, which is why we overthink about like the 10 different possible scenarios there could be, and we usually think about the worst possible scenario so that we can be prepared, and so that when something happens which is not as bad, we can finally feel relieved. Like all of these are just characteristics of an overthinker. I'm not saying that this is something that should happen often, and there are ways to deal with it and everything, but that's a whole different topic. Now the thing is, overthinkers fear uncertainty, they fear not knowing things. Now a human body is so beautiful that the moment it senses threat, it goes into this defense mode to protect us. So for overthinkers, like an overthinker like me, I see uncertainty as a threat, right? Like for example, I see uncertainty as a threat. So whenever there is a situation where there's uncertainty, which will be very often in life, of course, and it is to a magnitude that scares me, my body will try protecting me. And then comes this little thing in our brain called the amygdala. Yeah. This beautiful thing is like, bestie, let me protect you. Let me step in. So whenever this part in our brain senses danger and threat, it steps in. But the only problem with this beautiful little thing is that it is this emotion storehouse that processes fear, anxiety, danger, and it usually makes you take emotional decisions instead of logical decisions. So the moment you feel anxious and like just really panicked, you fail to make decisions from your logical mind. You are operating purely from emotions, which is why when your partner does not respond to you for a few hours, you bombard them with messages and calls. We've all been there, guys. It's okay. That's how we learn. So that is usually what happens, and which is why I realize that as an overthinker, when I have certain fears, it will make me anxious, and then this will end up happening. I might end up making emotional decisions. Now, of course, when I speak of these things and I talk about anxiety and overthinking in general, I'm not saying like, yes, it's okay. Like whenever you feel anxious, you are allowed to like act out. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that it happens. Like it's literally biology. It's not even a personal propaganda. Like it's literally this is literally what happens. The point is, of course, there are ways to work through it and whatever, but I also believe that everyone gets anxious. It's just that our magnitudes might be different, or the amount of things that we sense as danger might be different. One way to deal with it is, of course, making your nervous system learn that certain things are not danger. You have to train your mind to not react to certain situations a certain way. But I think everyone gets anxious. It's just that the level of things that we face danger from are different. And also people react to anxiety very differently. Some people, they cry. Some people get angry. Usually happens to me. Some people shut down and they become really calm. Some people become hyperactive. So they just like indulge in work and whatever. Or they're like, I need to get this done quickly. Some people are unable to take an action. And the society, guys, it's like so judgmental. People who cry and like get emotional and are loud with their emotions, and people who get lazy and are unable to take an action are judged more and they're considered weak. But people who shut down and like act calm or like become hyperactive, they're not seen with the same lens. I've just noticed that even though at the core of it, both these people in both these scenarios are getting anxious, but it's usually people who are being loud or who are expressing their emotions that are judged more. That's unfair. When do people start getting anxious? When do we develop anxiety? I don't know, but I think as per what psychology says, everything in our life, who we are, what we are, starts from when we were kids and how we were raised in our childhoods and whatever. And the very interesting thing is that we have no control over it. Like, we are like this because of what happened to us when we were 6. How was I supposed to know what to do? But I think as a kid also, I would like to believe that I was anxious. The kind of anxious where, I was obsessed with perfectionism. I genuinely thought that I need to be perfect at things. I also used to be really shy, so I would not talk a lot in class. I used to be really reserved. I would clean my desk. I would clean my study table at home quite frequently. And back then, all these traits were appreciated because my teachers thought I'm such a good student. Like, I rarely speak in class and I'm always so good with my homework and I'm always cleaning out things and keeping things clean. So of course those traits were appreciated and it was a good thing to be disciplined. But I think for me it came from anxiety as well. So was I a good student, a good kid, or was I just an anxious one? I guess we'll never know. But then guys, I entered the cringiest phase of my life. I would like to believe that was one of my cringiest phases of my life. It was the 6th to 8th grade, like your sort of pre-teen era. Please tell me that it's not only me who thinks that we act like complete, for the lack of a better word, idiots during that time. Like, is it just me or do you guys also relate? Like, I don't know why when you are that age, you like to believe that you know everything in life. You like to act like, I know it. I know what life is. I have figured it out. Of course, there are also a lot of changes that are happening in your body and all of it contributes to it, and you're learning, realizing a lot of things. It is a difficult period of that life. So, I mean, not to judge people in that age group, not to judge our past selves. Like, we were going through a lot and we were just doing what we thought was the best. So maybe it's part of growing up. But the major difference here was that in the first phase that I talked about when I was younger, anxiety was making me reserved. Anxiety was protecting me in the way where I was stepping back. In this phase, anxiety was making me do very weird things because I was trying to fit in, trying to act cool. So I was doing a lot of out of character things. Out of character, that's really subjective, but I think I was trying to act cool and be cool in whatever limited information I had. Those embarrassing Instagram pictures. Yes, I've been on Instagram since it was that blue colored icon. Weird slangs and a lot of weird things that I don't want to revisit right now, but a lot of weird but innocent things. I never did anything out of control or at the expense of something bigger. So this was the major difference between these two phases for me. Then I entered the third phase of my life, which was 9th grade and onwards. And something happened, guys. I suddenly realized that, hold up, something is wrong. I started feeling like something was wrong. There came the acknowledgement of anxiety. That's when I started to realize that, okay, I get anxious, I get upset, I get sad, I get angry because of certain things. And that was the acknowledgement phase. Coincidentally, that also happened to me in life when conversations around mental health were really starting to happen a lot on the internet and in and around with people and at school and things like that. So I was starting to realize that these things happen. I'm waking up sad. Why do I feel like crying? Why do I not feel like going to bed? It's affecting my studies. It's affecting how I look at people. It's affecting my relationships with people. And of course, again, there's a lot happening in your body at that time. So it is a really confusing period of your life. And people would tell me oh, this happens to everyone. And I was like, if this happens to everyone, then why are we not talking about it more? Why is everyone acting like it's so chill and cool? To me, it felt like I'm the only person who feels like this. And I, of course, also started overthinking a lot, which is one reason, guys, why I wanted to do this podcast to talk about overthinking on the internet in general. Because I remember during a certain phase of my life when I was overthinking a lot, I genuinely felt like I'm the only person and I felt alone and lonely. Of course, I was surrounded with people, but I felt like nobody really understood what I'm going through. Without even if you voice your problems or your issues or even your thoughts, it's usually countered with a solution or don't think like that. This is why I wanted to have a space on the internet where we can talk about these things and be like, it is fixable and it happens and it's normal, and there's so many people who feel like this. Anyway, coming back to the point, I did feel like that. And then after 12th grade, after I was done with school, I think I started accepting things more. I realized that it happens to a lot of people, and of course it's not a weakness. It's not a weakness. I started paying closer attention to what my triggers are, what makes me anxious, why do I act a certain way in certain situations, and it is a huge learning process. I still get anxious and I still make mistakes because of my anxiety. It's a process. And of course, I don't get anxious about the same things that I did when I was in ninth grade, but now there are very different situations, and in the future things will be very different. And sometimes you make a whole lot of progress and suddenly you retract and come back and make the same mistakes again. So it's all a process of life. And I usually like to read a lot about overthinking and anxiety in general. And recently I watched a bunch of content about this philosopher, Danish philosopher called Søren Kierkegaard. Now, I'm so sorry if I'm not saying his name correctly, but he was this philosopher who lived from 1813 to 1855, and he's considered the father of existentialism. Even though he never used the word existentialism anytime during his works, people later and afterwards considered him as the father of existentialism. But why are we talking about it? Why did I suddenly bring up a philosopher in the middle of this episode? Is because he was an amazing philosopher, very brilliant, funny, but he was an anxious person. He was really anxious. One of his really popular books is this book called The Concept of Anxiety, where he talks about anxiety. And he says that even though, of course, the general term for anxiety is that your body, whenever it senses a threat, it sort of starts acting up to protect you. But there's a lot more to it. And of course, people also use like stage fright, panic, fear as a synonym for anxiety. But Kierkegaard saw anxiety very differently. There's something that he said that is so beautiful. He said anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. The dizziness of freedom. Let me explain what that means. Basically, Kierkegaard says that the reason why we get anxious is because we have the freedom to choose. You as an individual being have the freedom to choose what to do, how to do, when to do or not to do. And when you know that you have so much freedom to make a choice, the consequence of that choice, the result of the choice also is your responsibility. We as human beings are so scared of making the wrong choice that it makes us anxious. So that freedom of making a choice makes us really anxious. But he also said that there's nothing to fear about when it comes to anxiety, because if you learn to face anxiety and to deal with it, you develop a very strong sense of self and identity, and that helps you a lot in life. So his ideology was that don't ignore anxiety, don't treat it as a villain, face it and work through it. In fact, he also suggested some methods to deal with anxiety. One was, of course, to use anxiety to your advantage. There are positives of anxiety, there are negatives of anxiety, but you need to understand that, one, if you're feeling anxious, that's just a proof of the fact that you have the freedom to make a choice. And there's nothing wrong with thinking about your choices beforehand. There's nothing wrong with taking a beat to think about what I'm doing, is it right or not? And he also said that it's much easier to acknowledge anxiety than to suppress it. It's going to have much more harmful effects on you if you suppress it, if you act like nothing's wrong. You need to face it. You need to deal with those heavy emotions that come with anxiety. Another interesting thing that he suggests when it comes to dealing with anxiety is pursuing a passion. Being passionate about something. It could either be a purpose in life, your goal, your aim. A person can be your passion, an ideology can be your passion, a profession can be your passion. Be passionate about anything. And he described passion as any goal, any aim in life that is important to you, that emotionally matters to you, and that you care about. It should be really important to you. It should really matter to you, and you should be emotionally connected to it. And pursuing that passion will help you deal with anxiety. He also talks about regret. Now, of course, one thing we fear as not only overthinkers but in general is, what if I regret making this decision? What if I do this and I regret it? Now, Kierkegaard said, honey, do this or do that. You will regret either ways. Now that's his perspective, but it's a really interesting one. He says you will end up regretting anyway. That's just how human beings are. So just do what your heart says. He also says that if you are regretting something, that's just a good signal, a good medium of how something needs to change in life. The other very interesting thing that he says, which I found very fascinating, is it's not the possibility that disappoints, it's the pleasure. The pleasure disappoints, not the possibility. Whenever you make a decision in life, there are countless possibilities that open up. Like, no choice is like a final choice. You still have multiple possibilities. If you chose a certain subject in school or whatever, I'm just giving you an example, there are multiple possibilities that it opens up to. It's something very similar to how the universe doesn't punish you for making a choice. It readjusts itself to, make terms with your new choice. But it's the pleasure that disappoints. You expected to feel a certain amount of happiness and pleasure when you made this choice, and maybe now you're not feeling that pleasure. And so you're feeling regret. How interesting and beautiful is that? Because pleasure is always limited. It will always run out. The possibilities are infinite. However, he also suggests a method of making the right choice when it comes to personal matters. Whenever you make a choice, it can be from two perspectives. One is personal favor, like personally what will bring you more pleasure, and the other is what is good for the greater cause, like what leads to greater good. And he believes that if you choose things that lead to greater good and like a greater cause, you're most likely to have less regret than making a choice based on personal pleasure. I think it's very simple. Like, in simple terms, it's very much like if you have an exam tomorrow, you can either sit right now and watch a YouTube video or study for your exam. And if you think about pleasure, you would want to watch a YouTube video. But if you think about like a greater good, it would be studying for the exam. And which one will you regret less? Studying for the exam. I also love this particular aspect of it. It is not what choice gives me the better odds. It is what choice defines who I am, even if it ruins me. It's not about what choice will give you good returns. It's about what choice defines who you are as a person, even if it's going to destroy you. There's something so poetic about it. Kierkegaard also says that, listen, the world is absurd. It's bizarre. There's no logical explanation to things. So embrace that absurdity. A lot of times in life, you will make a choice that is not rational, maybe. Right? Not everything can be rational and logical. For example, falling in love cannot be planned, cannot be rational. There are a lot of things in life that will not be rational because it's again very subjective. Rationality is also very subjective. So sometimes you will have to make a choice that only makes sense to you, but you'll have to believe in it. You will have to take a leap of faith, because that is just how the world is. So you need to believe in what you believe in, even if it doesn't make sense to the entire world. Interesting stuff, right? Now, of course, this is just what Kierkegaard believed about these certain things, and I found it really fascinating, so I wanted to tell you guys about it. You don't have to follow everything he says, but it's just good to have more information and more perspective. I usually, this is my first time doing an episode like this, like talking about a philosopher or like some references. So tell me if you guys like it. Tell me how you like it and if you enjoy it, because then I'll do more episodes like this. And I genuinely hope that you enjoy listening to me. Thank you so much for spending your time with me. Please let me know what you thought of the episode. I love reading your reviews. DM them to me on Instagram. All the information will be in the description wherever you're reading it. Subscribe, like, share, follow, all that social cues. You know that. Thank you so much once again for tuning in. I hope you have an amazing time. Now I'll sign off, but I'll see you super soon. Ciao. Bye.